Hey guys, it's Luke Javersack with GSLoopDFS.com, bringing you guys a preview for the 2021 Genesis Invitational. It's one of my favorite tournaments of the year, and it's held in Los Angeles, beautiful Los Angeles, California, at Riviera Country Club. It's one of the most iconic golf courses in the entire world. You've probably seen it on TV plenty of times before. There have been US Opens there, obviously the Genesis every year, and honestly, it's always a blast. There's almost always a winner that's an iconic golfer, somebody that, has a lot of wins. I mean, it was JB Holmes a couple years ago, so that bucked that trend, but I don't expect that to happen this year. Expect it to be one of the cream of the crop golfers, and looking forward to it. So Riviera is a George Thomas design. It was designed in the early 1900s, and it's a par 71 with POA grass. So it's pretty similar to what we saw last week at Pebble with the POA greens. It is a par 71 this time around. And I would say that Pebble and Torrey Pines from the week before are actually good comp courses for Riviera. Aside from being in a similar area over in California, they are pretty long golf courses, even though they aren't advertised as such. Riviera is about a 7,200 yard course, which is a little bit longer than Pebble, very comparable to Torrey Pines, but it actually plays a little bit longer than you would expect at 7,200 yards. And so I would describe it as sneaky long, and that's because there are two really short par fives, so a lot of times when there's a longer course, a lot of that distance is added onto the par fives, and that's not the case at Riviera. They are two very short par fives, and there's also a drivable par four. What that means is that the par threes and all of the other par fours are extremely difficult. They're very long holes, and as such, a lot of players are going to be having long irons into greens, especially with the pin placements and the tee box locations that they use for an invitational tournament like this. So we'll get into what that means here in a little bit, but it is going to play very long this week, and it usually does. Riviera is also known for having one of the most complex designs. So you have greens that literally have sand traps in the middle of them. You have some of the most sloped greens that you'll see on the PGA Tour, very, very thick rough as well. I forget the name of the strain of grass. It starts with a K. I think it's like Kuakua, something like that. I can't pronounce it, but it's very thick. It's very hard to hit out of, and they only use it at golf courses where there aren't a lot of resort guests. They use it at pretty hard golf courses for that reason. So let's talk about how this golf course profile. So from a statistical standpoint, around the green game and putting is extremely important at Riviera. Around the green game ranks 12th out of 50th in terms of courses on tour in terms of its importance, making it one of the more important, obviously. Shots green putting is also important. It's 15th out of 50th in terms of courses on tour. So short game normally isn't something that we weigh a whole lot, except at specific courses, and this is one of those courses. So we'll get into that here in a little bit, but the main idea of having a good short game at Riviera is there's a lot of trouble to be had. There's a lot of hazards. There's that very thick rough I was talking about, and having an ability to recover from those situations is always important. There's a lot of times golfers get double, triple bogey on holes and completely play themselves out of the tournament. You want to make sure that you're avoiding those kind of golfers and situations. It's also important to have a good around the green game to use the contours and the environment of Riviera to your advantage. So there's a lot of holes with massive slopes, a lot of holes where pin locations aren't acceptable or accessible is the word I was looking for, unless you hit them to another part of the green and use the slope to bring it in. A lot of that is an art form. It's not an art form that a lot of golfers quite frankly have perfected, and that's also why around the green game is helpful this week. Another stat that's important for Riviera, and you see this a lot with past winners and especially top 5 finishes, are with driving distance. A lot of the long hitters are obviously able to take advantage of this golf course due to that sneaky length I was talking about. Distance ranked 21st out of 50th on tour, so it's not one of the highest ranked stats by any means, but it is more important than typical. And again, I think that's due to the lush rough. Having less distance into greens when you do miss the fairway is going to be important. Plus, to take advantage of those long holes, right? If you're hitting 250 yard approach shots into par fours, it's very unlikely that you're going to make a birdie. Those are hard shots, and to stop it 5 to 10 feet from the hole is almost impossible. So having distance is going to be very important this week, if not a necessity for success. So this course does model as a course where you need a short game and a good long game, which is very rare. So if a golfer does excel in both their long game and their short game, they're going to absolutely pop this week. There are a couple people that fit that role, but they're very, very limited, right? So not every golfer we play this week is going to fit that role. So just keep that in mind. But if they do, then they're an even better fit. Keep in mind Jason Kokrak, Dustin Johnson, those kind of players, the unicorns out there, they're going to pop this week. So some miscellaneous stats that are important as I was going through my process this week is scrambling from 30 plus yards. So that's hitting, bunker shots from long bunkers, let's say fairway bunkers, or even just, big misses. There's a lot of them on this golf course, and it actually ranks as a top 5 out of 50 courses in terms of that long scrambling. So that tells me a couple things. That tells me that iron play is maybe not as important. A lot of people are really missing greens. I mean, 30 yards is a big miss for a PGA Tour player. And the fact that that's actually important at Riviera tells me that maybe approach play isn't the most important stat this week. That is something that's pretty eye-opening to me, and something that I thought you'd want to hear about. Another stat that popped was consecutive birdies or eagles made. So streaky players tend to do well here, which makes sense. You would assume that streaky players play well, but that's in comparison to all golf courses, right? So it takes that into consideration. What that tells me is that this golf course, due to its difficulty, you have to really, really be precise. When you're on a streak like that, it's usually because you're in the zone per se. So I think I just think it's telling for, the winner here is going to be someone that has a really good week. You're not going to run into it by accident. And the last 2 stats I thought were important were approaches from 250 to 275 yards, so those super long approach shots, and approaches from 200 yards in the rough. Now, both of those are, typically rare situations, but at Riviera, they aren't that rare. You have that, rough that pretty much swallows up golf balls, plus those sneaky long par fours that when you miss the fairway, you are dealing with these shots. So that is something to keep in mind. That's where driving distance really comes into consideration. You don't want to be in that situation where you're hitting 250-yard approach shots from the rough. And if you are, having the distance is going to make that even a possibility. So thought that was important too. So let's talk about some of the past winners, some of the people that have done well here before. First and most notable would be Dustin Johnson. So Dustin Johnson has top 10, 4 of his last 5 times out at Riviera, including a win. So that's impressive there. Rory's never finished outside the top 20, including a top 5 last year. He was actually winning at one point last year. He just couldn't close the deal. Adam Scott's won here a couple times. He has a bunch of top 5s. Bubba's won here 3 of his 6 times out. So this is definitely a Bubba track. He'll definitely be someone I play this week. And Hideki has a top 10 pretty much every single time he's played here. So as you can see, all those guys are long off the tee, literally every single one of them, and they all are pretty good with their short game as well. So no surprises there, obviously. They're all going to be staples this week, but I don't have to preach. You guys all know that anyways. So to reiterate, the targets this week are going to be guys that are good with their short game, guys that have distance, and guys that are good here in the past, that have that past experience. So to begin, our first spend up option this week is going to be Bryson DeChambeau. So it's not one of the golfers I mentioned in that past experience, because those are all very, very obvious options. Bryson DeChambeau maybe isn't as obvious to a lot of you. Bryson's number 1 in the field, shots gained off the tee, which completely neutralizes the rough. We saw that at the US Open. He's also top 10 in shots gained putting and around the green game. So he fits the bill in every single category we're looking for this week. And he's also a very smart golfer. He's somebody that strategizes before every single tournament. And I think at a golf course like this, where you see some of the most complex greens, hazards, you name it, that cerebral part of his game is going to be very important, very beneficial. So for a spend up option, if you're looking to get a little different, I love Bryson DeChambeau. For a second man in, I love Scotty Scheffler this week. So Scotty Scheffler is a top 15 off the tee game. He's top 5 in distance, so he's absolutely rakes off the tee. But he also has a great short game. So his around the green game is top 10 in the world. His putting's not quite there. He's about a neutral putter, but he has his weeks. So we saw that at the PGA Championship. He got hot, he had a good week, and he top 5. Now, he's also very streaky. He has rounds where he'll shoot in the low 60s, and he has rounds where he'll play absolutely terrible. At Riviera, we saw that that's actually very beneficial. When you're a streaky player, you tend to do better at Riviera. So not only do I like how he profiles with his distance in a short game, but I like that he's streaky. He does lack experience that I mentioned could be very important here, but I'm willing to take a flyer on Scotty Scheffler. In the mid-tier, a golfer I really like would be Matthew Fitzpatrick. So he's absolutely elite putting. He's top 5 in the field and around the green and in his putting in this field. And Matthew Fitzpatrick isn't a bomber by any means, but he's definitely not a short driver of the golf ball. He averages over 310 yards off the tee, which obviously to all of us normal humans, right? That would be insane. But for a PGA Tour player, it's pretty average. At Riviera, that should get by. You definitely don't want to be a short player, though. He's not short. He also has a knack to take down really hard golf courses. He top 5'd at the Memorial. He does well at the Masters. I expect Matthew Fitzpatrick to do well this week. Definitely top 20. It has top 5 upside if he has a really good week. So I like him in the mid-tier for sure. For a value play, Jason Kokrak's a great play this week. I expect him to be very popular, but he's top 15 in distance, top 15 putter. Has been great for him this year as well, even though he's coming off a missed cut. But I expect him to be very safe, very popular, but somebody I'll definitely be playing for fantasy this week. Probably won't bet him for an outright. I don't see him winning. This is a very stacked field, but I expect him to play well. And my last play this week, my diamond in the rough per se, is Dylan Fratelli. Now, Dylan Fratelli played well at the Masters, so he's not going to be completely under the radar by any means. But he added 40, 50 yards to his drives just by trying to swing harder. He actually mentioned that in the interview at the Masters. That's when I first learned about this. But he decided that when he drives the ball, he's just going to swing as hard as he can rather than hold back, try to place it. And he's been hitting the ball straight. So a lot of people talk about Bryson adding distance, Rory even, Jordan Spieth, but Dylan Fratelli's actually added the most physical distance to his drives. So I like his distance here. I like his upside. He's a very streaky golfer. He puts up a lot of really low rounds. And if he catches a hot putter, he is a terrible putter historically, not even great around the green, but I'm betting on his volatility. If he can put together a couple really good rounds on the high end of the volatility, he'll finish top 5, and he's going to be dirt cheap this week. He's not an expensive golfer. He's not going to be a popular golfer, so I'm okay taking a couple shots on him. At fantasy, he'll probably be in like 15%, maybe 20% of my lineups. Pretty aggressive take on a guy that's going to be about 1% owned, but if he ends up paying it off, it'll be very beneficial to me. So yeah, I love Dylan Fratelli this week, and that's all I got for you guys. I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys do well for the Genesis Invitational this week at Riviera, and let me know in the comments who you guys think is going to win. See ya.